Year 3000. Earth had become the heart of the galaxy. A single language echoed through every street, and people from across the stars lived side by side like neighbors. But within that dazzling rhythm of life, there were corners no one dared to enter. There were people who had chosen to forget the past, until the past came knocking. And one night, as the wind howled through the frozen alleys, destiny rapped on the door of a small house. A journey was about to begin. A battle not just to save one life, but to save the soul of a man already losing his own. Arendor Prime, Earth, year 3000. The super city stretched like an ocean of light. Sky rails tore across the night, leaving faint blue streaks hanging in the air. Hologram billboards floated like artificial constellations, blinking softly above the streets. But in Sector 9, an old labor district at the edge of the city, the alleys stayed damp and dark, as though they never belonged to this shining galaxy. Kael Draven sat on a wooden chair in front of the old house, back against the wall, bottle balanced on his knee. One bottle was empty, the second half gone. The street lamp painted his sunburned face in amber, catching the faint scar that ran from cheekbone to temple, an old mark from the interstellar war. His eyes were wide open but empty, staring as if through the sky toward somewhere far beyond, where Titan had taken his wife and daughter 3 years ago in an orbital blast. A cargo hauler roared overhead, shaking the corrugated roof next door. Kael didn't move. He had once commanded a special ops squad, making split-second calls that saved dozens of lives. But now there were no decisions left to make. Only drink and wait for the night to pass. A gust of wind carried the acrid tang of plasma engines through the alley. Far off, shouting flared, angry drunk too loud for this hour. Kael glanced that way, his eyes narrowing. 3 figures stumbled into view, laughing, kicking a trash can down the street. He stayed seated. Nights in Sector 9 were always like this. But then through the noise came a sharp, high-pitched scream, a scream that didn't belong to drunks. Kael set the bottle on the ground. His hand still remembered the weight of a rifle, but tonight there was only darkness and his own fists. He rose slowly and stepped toward the alley. His shadow stretched long under the lamp, the scar on his face like a warning sign. A slight figure struggled among the drunks, Mira Solon, shoving their hands away. Kael hesitated for a beat, the thought flickering. Why should I care? But her eyes caught the light, eyes silently begging. Kael exhaled, as if letting go of something that had gripped him for 3 long years. He rolled his wrist, bones cracking. His boot struck the pavement hard as he stepped into the light. Sector 9's quiet night was about to end. Behind him, the bottle rolled, clinking. The 3 drunks turned, grinning. They hadn't realized who had just stepped into their alley, and they hadn't yet learned that tonight they had chosen the wrong man to provoke. The 3 drunks spun around. Their laughter thinned as they saw who had stepped into the light. "You lost, old man?" One of them sneered, breath stinking of liquor. Another spat on the ground. "Walk away." "Not your business," Kael didn't answer. He stepped closer. Only half a body's distance stood between him and Mira now. Her eyes were wide, chin trembling. But she didn't cry out, only drew in a deep breath, bracing for pain. The 3rd man grabbed Mira's arm and yanked hard. Kael shifted his shoulder, laid his hand on the man's wrist, light as a touch, then twisted. The joint cracked. The man screamed and let Mira go. "Old man!" the bald one hissed through his teeth. "Think you're a hero?" He lunged, swinging wide. Kael stepped back half a pace. His arm swept across, elbow blocking the strike. His knee shot upward, short, brutal into the soft of the belly. The man's breath vanished. He folded, knees buckling. The last one drew a knife from his belt. The blade flashed. Mira gasped. "Don't!" Kael had seen that glint more times than he cared to remember. 1 half-step sideways. His right wrist hooked the attacker's. Left hand clamped the spine of the blade. Twisted. Momentum carried the man past him. The knife came free. Kael flicked the blade into the dark, heel kicking it deeper into the alley. "Enough?" His voice was low, steady. "Kill him." The bald one roared, forcing himself upright. He charged again, blind with rage. Kael didn't rush. He sank lower. Feet set. The punch came, short, sharp, straight. The sound of knuckles meeting cheekbone was dry and final. The man dropped flat, back hitting concrete. Silent. The one with the broken wrist staggered to his feet. Reaching blindly for Mira, Kael turned, pivoting on his heel. Sweeping the man's ankle, he crashed face first. Kael's knee pinned his shoulder, holding him down. Go. Only one word. The two who could still move dragged each other away. Cursing as they vanished into the alley's dark, the unconscious one snored where he lay. Only Kael. And Mira remained. The street lamp flickered in the wind. Sheet metal clattered across the alley. Mira hugged her elbow, drawing a long breath. Thank you. Kael nodded. He didn't hold her gaze. He stepped back, giving her space. Walk safe, he said, voice rough. You were a soldier? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Kael paused. The scar at his temple twitched. Once? His reply was quiet. Not anymore. Mira looked down at her hand, a thin line of red where her nails had dug in. She wanted to ask more. Name, unit. Why a man who fought like that sat with a bottle every night? But all that came out was, if you hadn't been here, go home. Kael picked up the bottle he had dropped earlier, set it back on the step. His eyes swept the alley, stopping where the knife had landed. Don't take this way again. Mira nodded, hesitated, then stepped back. She moved out of the thin pool of lamplight, glanced back once more. The man still stood there, silent as a post, yet the blows he had struck still thudded inside her chest. Not blind violence, but discipline, experience, and a sadness too deep to hide. My name's Mira, she said softly, leaving him a fragment of herself, just in case she ever needed to call on him. Kael didn't speak, just the faintest nod. She left, steps quickening. Engines hummed on the elevated highway above. Kael returned to his yard, set the chair upright. He was about to sit, then stopped. His eyes landed on the half-full bottle. His fingers hovered, a long breath escaped him. He opened the cap, but didn't drink. Set it back down, and stood there, staring at the night sky over Erendor Prime. Cold, distant, brilliant, and not his. The next evening, Mira came home half an hour early. She passed through Sector 9, glancing over the low fence. The man was there again, lying on the same chair, staring at the sky. And from that night on, almost every day she passed that way, always stopping for just one quiet second, to look. The next night, Mira deliberately came home early. Her steps slowed as she reached the mouth of Sector 9, heart thudding once. The wooden chair was still there, and Kael Draven still sat exactly as before, back against the wall, arms folded across his chest. The bottle rested at his feet unopened. Mira's pace slowed further. Through the low fence, she saw his eyes were not on the street but fixed on the sky. Under the yellow lamp glow, his face looked carved from stone. The second night, the third. She passed again. Each evening, the image never changed. Kael sat in the same chair, silent, like a fixture of the old house. Mira began to wonder, how did this man live? Did he ever sleep or simply drink until exhaustion took him? One night, she saw the bottle slip from his hand, roll across the yard. Kael stood, not to pick it up, but to drive his fist into the wall, once, twice, each blow like years of buried anger breaking loose. The sound echoed through the alley, making Mira flinch. He stood still a moment, blood beading on his knuckles, then sat again. Another night. Mira passed with her younger brother, Joran. The boy whispered, barely audible, "Was he a soldier?" Mira glanced at Joran, then back at Kael. She didn't answer, because she didn't know. Mira realized she had started waiting for nightfall. Not because she wanted to watch this bleak routine, but because something about it felt strange. This man didn't look like someone who had given up entirely. The way he sat, back straight, shoulders squared, was like a man enduring a punishment he had given himself. One night, rain came suddenly, pounding the alley. Mira took shelter under the roof across the street, but Kael didn't go inside. He let the rain pour over him, washing the dried blood from his fist. The street lamp turned him into a blurred, lonely silhouette. Only when the rain stopped did Mira finally head home. Inside her chest was a strange new feeling, part pity, part curiosity. She no longer saw Kael as just the drunk. She began to wonder what had happened to turn the man who saved her life into this. And that question grew heavier with every passing day. One evening, when Mira came home, she found her mother coughing hard. In the cramped kitchen, Joran tried to comfort her, whispering, "I saw those guys with the scorpion tattoos at the market today. They kept staring at Lena." The words made Mira's skin prickle, like a warning of trouble about to break. The door clicked shut behind her, and Mira heard the harsh, racking cough from the back room. The sharp smell of cough syrup and rice porridge filled the narrow kitchen. The ceiling light flickered. "Mama, drink some water," Mira said, setting her bag down and helping Hannah sit against the pillow. Her mother's voice was hoarse, broken. "I'm fine." "Don't worry." Joran stood nearby, still tense. He swallowed hard. "Today, at the East Market," he said quietly, "I saw 3 men, scorpions tattooed on their necks and arms. They were standing near the fruit stalls, staring at Lena. For a long time." Mira's hand clenched. "What time exactly?" "Late afternoon. They were talking low, strange accent. Didn't sound like anyone from our district." "Did you see a vehicle? Anything that stood out?" Joran thought for a second, then answered quickly. "Smelled like machine oil. Boots covered in gray dust. One had a scar crossing his left eyebrow." Mira poured the cough syrup, held it out to her mother. Hannah forced it down, then gripped Mira's hand. "Don't worry. You still have your evening shift?" "I'll take the night off," Mira said, shaking her head. "I'll make it up tomorrow." From the table, Lena looked up, hair tied high, her young eyes bright. "Don't worry so much, sis. I still walk home with my friends like always." "No," Mira said instantly. "Starting tomorrow, change your route. Walk with Joran, avoid the East Market, and don't stop if anyone calls you." Lena's mouth tightened. "But," I said no. Mira's voice dropped, final, like turning a key in a lock. Lena lowered her head. "Yes." Outside the window, Sector 9 lay windless, the occasional late-night vendor's call echoing faintly. Mira stirred the porridge and ladled a small bowl for her mother. Unpaid receipts lay on the shelf. A message blinked on her screen. "Short-staffed tonight." She turned it off. In silence, she faced Joran. "Tomorrow you'll tell me everything about those 3 men. Every detail. I'll write it down. You gonna call ESB?" "Not yet," Mira said, eyes fixed on the window. "But if they show up again?" "I report immediately." Another cough from Hannah broke the moment. Mira helped her lie down, pulled the blanket to her shoulders. For a moment, the room was filled only with the ticking wall clock and her mother's raspy breathing. Mira noticed her own hand trembling. She slid it under the table, clenched until it stopped shaking. "Lena," Mira said softly. "Give me your bag." Lena handed it over. Mira pulled out a small plastic whistle from the drawer, fastened it to the strap. "If anything feels wrong, blow this. Loud, no arguing. No turning back. Run!" Lena nodded, clutching the bag to her chest. Joran looked at his sister, then at Lena, his face set harder than any 10-year-old's should be. "I'll go with her. Always." Mira stepped onto the porch, cracked the door open. The night of Arendor Prime spilled golden light into the alley. From there, she could see the low fence across the way, and Kael's wooden chair still sitting there, empty and waiting. A fleeting thought brushed her mind. If something goes wrong, could I knock on that man's door? The question passed like mist. She closed the door. Mira cleared the dishes, sent the kids to bed early. She sat at the edge of her mother's bed, listening until the breathing grew steady. In her head, a list began to form. Alternate routes, pickup times, markets to avoid, the names of stall owners she trusted. Each item checked off, none forgotten. She rose, dimmed the lights. The apartment sank into a fragile kind of peace, the kind that had to be held with both hands. Mira gripped the doorknob, drew a long breath. Tomorrow would be different. It had to be. The next morning, Mira left early with Lena and Joran, but by late afternoon, when the market's shadows stretched long across the stalls, Lena was no longer waiting at the usual spot. Her phone stayed silent, and in the East Market alley, an empty space opened up, cold as a trap just sprung, late afternoon at the meeting point. The sunlight slanted over the East Market roof. Lena wasn't there. Mira froze. She looked left, right. The crowd streamed past like water. A small cargo truck had just backed out of a narrow alley, leaving a slick trail of oil across the bricks. Joran tugged her sleeve. "She hasn't been here." "Not since I got here." "Call her," Mira dialed. The ringtone went on and on. No answer. She sent a message. No reply. She ran along the row of stalls. The fruit seller shook her head. A coal vendor said he had seen a girl with a high ponytail walking with two men, their boots dusted gray. They were moving fast. No time to ask. Mira dropped to her knees. Heart pounding, something glinted between two bricks. Lena's plastic whistle, the one Mira had tied to her bag, snapped clean in half. The world went silent, as though all sound had been sucked away. Only the rush of blood in her ears remained. Mira clutched the broken whistle, shot to her feet. "Joran, go home. Stay with Mama, lock the door. Don't open it for anyone. What about you?" "I'm going to ESB." The Arendor Security Bureau glowed with cold white light. A row of people waited, forms in hand. Screens displayed ticket numbers. Mira went straight to the front desk. "My sister's missing. Lena Solon. 14, Sector 9, East Market. Men with scorpion tattoos have been watching her for days. Just now, they might have..." The clerk looked up from the screen. "Fill this out." "Include time, full description." "I already did." Mira pushed the paper forward, her hand trembling. "Please check the market cameras." "Close the south gate." They smelled like machine oil, boots gray with dust. One had a scar across his left eyebrow. "Please." Keys clacked. "Your report has been filed. Missing person cases take 24 hours for priority review." 24 hours? Mira's voice almost cracked into a shout. "If this is the Black Scorpion Syndicate, you are not authorized to spread criminal organization names in a public facility," the clerk cut in by the book. "ESB will review CCTV data. You should go home and wait." Mira's grip tightened on the counter until her knuckles went white. "Wait? What good is waiting? We're handling a high caseload." A glance at the wall clock. "A patrol team will perform an initial sweep tonight." The glass doors closed behind her. Cold night air hit her face. Mira stood on the steps, breath locked in her throat. 24 hours, a number that felt like a closing door. She ran back toward Sector 9. The apartment was lit. Hannah's coughing echoed through the room. Joran opened the door, eyes red. "Sis," ESB said. "They'll review." She couldn't bring herself to say wait. Mira set the broken whistle on the table. Joran looked at it, jaw tight. "I checked the whole market. Nothing." In Mira's mind, a map lit up. Escape routes from the market, the cargo bay, parking lots. Blind alleys where cameras didn't reach. She saw again the wooden chair across the fence. The man sitting straight-backed under the yellow lamp. "Kael Draven, you stay here with Mama," Mira said, voice raw. "Lock the door. Don't open it. If anything happens, call me right away." "Where are you going?" Mira grabbed her coat. Her eyes no longer trembled. "To knock on the door of the man who can do what ESB won't in time." She went down the stairs, across the damp porch. The wind carried the salt smell of the distant port. Sector 9 lay silent, as if holding its breath. Mira stopped at the low fence. Inside, Kael sat, his back a dark line cutting the lamp's glow. Her hand gripped the gate latch. 1 beat, 2. She didn't knock. Night fell deeper over Arendor Prime. Mira drew a long breath and raised her hand. The sound of her knuckles on the gate was soft, but enough to wake a man who had slept too long in the dark. Night settled over the labor district like a heavy black shroud. The street lamp cast a pale yellow halo over the low fence, stretching Mira's shadow long across the damp bricks. She stood at Kael Draven's gate. One hand gripped the iron latch. The other clutched the broken whistle tight against her chest, as if it were a charm. Inside the yard, Kael still sat in the wooden chair, back straight, eyes fixed on the night sky. No movement. No words, only the wind threading through the leaves and Mira's slow, hesitant footsteps. She drew a deep breath. Why am I here? This man had saved her once, yes, but he could just as easily send her away. Say the words. Your problem isn't mine. And if he did, Mira didn't know who else she could ask. Her chest felt tight. She almost turned away, but the chair creaked. Kael had turned his head. The light caught his face, the scar on his temple glinting in the dark. You planning to stand there till morning? Kael's voice was low, rough. Not unkind, but enough to make Mira flinch. Mira pressed her lips together. The words stuck in her throat. I need to ask you something. Kael stayed seated, gaze steady. Then ask. Mira squeezed the broken whistle until her fingers ached. A long moment passed. In her mind, Lena's face appeared, her smile from that morning, and then the empty space where she should have been that afternoon. Mira drew in a sharp breath, but she didn't step closer, only half a step, testing the water. Kael's brow lifted. You come here at this hour. This isn't small. He set the bottle aside and rose to his feet. His shadow stretched across the gate, blotting out most of the lamplight. Mira felt her legs locked to the ground. Her throat was dry. My sister is missing. The words broke out like a dam bursting. Mira's voice trembled, but it held. Kael watched her for a beat longer, and in his once empty eyes, something shifted, a sharp alertness flaring to life. Inside, he said. Mira hesitated for a single heartbeat, then opened the gate and stepped in. The gate groaned shut behind her, sealing them off from the sleeping street. For a moment, Mira felt as though she had crossed a line. From fear into action. Kael led her to the porch and motioned to the long bench. He crossed his arms, leaning against the post. Now tell me everything, from the start. Leave nothing out. His voice was deep, carrying the weight of a command. Mira filled her lungs, ready to tell him everything. Mira sat up straight, hands on her knees to stop them from shaking. My sister's name is Lena, 14. She went missing this afternoon at the East Market. Kael gave a small nod. Exact time? Between mid-afternoon and sunset. When I got to the meeting spot, the light was already slanting. She wasn't there? Signs? Only the whistle I tied to her bag strap. Snapped in half. Stuck between two bricks. Kael's eyes flicked to Mira's hand, still gripping one half of the whistle. Witnesses? Joran, my brother. He said the men had gray dust on their boots, reeked of machine oil. One had a scar across his left eyebrow. And Mira swallowed hard. They had scorpion tattoos. Kael was silent for a beat. Not surprised. You've reported it to ESB. Yes. They told me to go home and wait. They'll check the CCTV. I can't just sit and wait. Correct. Kael's gaze locked on hers. Waiting only costs more time. He stepped inside, opened a wooden cabinet, a metal case with a latch. He set it on the table, flipped the lid. Inside, tape, a folding knife, a flashlight, thin gloves, and an old transmitter, still working. He pulled out a roll of cloth bandage and handed it to her. Wrap your hand. Clutching that whistle is tearing up your palm. Mira let out a faint, tired laugh. I'm fine. You're shaking. Kael set the bandage in her hand. Wrap it. Mira obeyed, then looked up at him. Will you help me? Kael didn't answer right away. He stared across the dark yard, weighing something unseen. When the scorpions mark someone, he said slowly, they don't stop at one try. If we wait until morning, the trail will go cold. Mira's shoulders tensed. So, I'll help. 2 words, heavy as a lock sliding shut, but his voice hardened right after. There are rules. Mira nodded, waiting. First, Kael said, from now on, you follow my lead. No improvising. Not even one step. Understood? Second, kill every notification you don't need. One channel only. He placed a thin comm mic on the table. Clip it to your collar. Mira took it, her hands steadier now. Third, Kael continued, if there's a fight, you stay behind me. Eyes open, mouth shut. If I say run, you run. No looking back. Mira's throat was dry. I'll do exactly what you say. And one more thing. Kael's gaze fell on the broken whistle. The East Market has 3 overlapping cameras, but 2 blind alleys. If they took her through the blind spot to the freight yard, she's probably in a vehicle by now. You know this because? Because I used to patrol there. Long ago. And Mira finally understood. The man who had sat so still on that wooden chair was never useless. He had only turned himself off. Now he was switching back on. Kael shut the case, pulled on his gloves. We hit 3 places. East Market, blind alley. Backlot behind the cold storage. And a bar, where their runners usually sell info by night's end. Which bar? Raven's End, edge of Sector 9. The owner owes me a favor. Mira leaned forward. We're going now? Now. Kael grabbed his coat, glanced at the bottle sitting on the step. Paused a beat, then left it. Take this. He handed Mira a small flashlight. 2 clicks to signal. 3 means fall back. Mira drew a deep breath, clipped the mic, tucked the flashlight into her sleeve. Thank you. Kael opened the gate. The night outside met them with the metallic salt of the port and the whistle of wind through the pipes. Stay close, he said, voice low. Raven's End first. Raven's End sat at the far corner of Sector 9, its flickering neon sign buzzing weakly in the night. Inside, the air was a mix of smoke and old metal, harsh laughter, the clink of glasses. Kael went in first, Mira close on his heels. A few men at the bar glanced their way, then looked back to their drinks when they saw the familiar scar on Kael's face. Behind the counter, a broad-shouldered man squinted. Kael Draven, thought you'd vanished from this sector. Need information, Kael said flatly. Fast, Brand smirked. Information costs. Kael slid a credit chip across the counter. This enough? Brand scanned it, nodded once. Tonight a crew's been sitting at the back table. Scorpion tattoos on their wrists. Not drinking much? Waiting on a guy named Slake. Kael motioned for Mira to stay near the door, then walked to the back. 4 men were sharing a cheap bottle. One laughed loud enough to show the Black Scorpion inked across his neck. Kael stopped beside them, his voice low. I'm asking once, who did you take out of the East Market this afternoon? For a beat, silence. Then the whole table laughed. This old man drunk? The tattooed one sneered. Kael didn't reply. His hand settled on the man's shoulder, slow, deliberate, and squeezed until the joint cracked. The laughter died instantly. Around 8, the man hissed through clenched teeth. Slake came. Said delivery before midnight. Where? An old warehouse near the cold docks. I don't know the number. Kael let go, leaving the man clutching his shoulder. No one at the table dared laugh again. Just then, the door banged open. A tall, wiry man stepped in, scorpion tattoo on his wrist. The instant he saw Kael, his face changed. Old soldier, he snarled. You're in too deep. Then he spun and bolted. Kael didn't hesitate. He was already moving. Mira stumbled for a beat, then ran after him. The alley outside was slick, their footsteps echoing off wet stone. Kael pulled out his flashlight. Clicked twice, its strobe flashing against the wall. Keep distance, he shouted back. The man darted past a line of oil drums. Nearly slipping, Kael caught him at the corner, yanked him back by the collar. Both went down hard. The man fought, elbows flying. But Kael blocked every strike, pinning him. A single, precise punch dropped him cold. Mira arrived, breathing hard. Kael rifled the man's pockets and came up with a thin silver data shard. He glanced at it, eyes narrowing. Transport schedule, coordinates. So Lena's there? Not sure yet, but it's our first real trail. Kael pulled Mira to her feet, gestured for her to move before backup came. Come on, One more stop tonight. The South Docks. If this schedule's right, they'll move her before dawn. Mira gripped the shard tight. For the first time since the afternoon, hope flickered in her chest. Faint, but real. The South Docks glowed with sodium light, casting a sickly yellow sheen over the murky water. Cranes loomed motionless like iron skeletons. The wind from the orbital bay carried the salt and oil stench up across the concrete pier. Kael motioned for Mira to crouch, leading her between a row of containers. He tapped the mic at her collar. Remember? One channel. Don't speak unless I ask. Mira nodded, heart pounding like waves slamming a steel hull. An ESB patrol truck was parked deep in the shadows between two warehouses. Its door opened. A crisp uniformed officer stepped out, boots polished to a mirror shine. From the opposite side, a man with a scorpion tattoo on his wrist approached, cap pulled low. Mira tensed. ESB! Kael pressed her shoulder, easing her lower. Stay still. The two men faced each other under the lamp's glow. The officer didn't even look around. He drew a thin black credit chip from his breast pocket. The Scorpion man handed over a small foil-wrapped package. Quick, silent, clean. Mira ground her teeth. There, Kael shook his head. Watch their lips. Don't talk. The officer spoke slow enough for Kael to read. Schedule holds. Truck moves before dawn. If anything goes wrong, call Kane. The tattooed man nodded. Ravik Kane doesn't want noise. The officer clicked his tongue. Dock 3 gate will stay open 10 minutes. Outer cams are under maintenance. Both men chuckled. Two old friends, trading secrets. A distant foghorn tore through the air. The officer flinched, glanced at his watch. That's it. He pocketed the chip. Turned away. The ESB truck rolled off, its lights flashing once before cutting out. The Scorpion man tapped a message into his comm, then disappeared into the shadow of Warehouse B. Mira gripped the container edge. You saw that? ESB? I saw. Kael's voice was a whisper. And now we know 2 things. Dock 3 will be open. And the name Ravik Kane. From around the corner came the rhythmic strike of boots on metal. A dock guard, sweeping his flashlight beam across the rows of cargo. The light crept closer to their hiding spot. Mira held her breath. Kael pulled her flush against the container wall. Lowering her head beneath the edge, the beam paused, then slid away. Footsteps faded into the distance. Mira exhaled. Why not grab him now? Take 1 pawn, you lose the board, Kael said, eyes still fixed where the Scorpion had vanished. We need a destination, not a headline. He pulled the data shard from earlier, slotted it into the old wrist receiver. The grimy display flickered to life, spitting out broken strings. Kael scanned fast. Simple cipher. Looks like a schedule. Can you break it? Yes. A set of characters flashed across the screen. W47, 03 gate. Pre-dawn Mira frowned. What's W47? Not sure, Kael said, narrowing his eyes. But I'd bet it's a warehouse. We confirm tonight. He shut the display, gestured toward the deeper shadows. Somewhere on the pier, a crane groaned as if a giant creature was waking from sleep. Mira followed, still clutching the broken whistle half. The name Ravik Kane lodged in her mind like a thorn. If he had the weight to buy off ESB, this was bigger than just a kidnapping. Kael stopped at the edge of shadow, scanning the docks one last time. We have a route and a name, he said quietly. Now we get the time. He clenched his wrist as though locking himself into focus, completely sober now. Let's move. Find W47. The salty wind cut along the wall as they crossed the dark freight yard. Kael led Mira past a row of rust-streaked containers, stopping at a silver-painted door stenciled with W47. Under the sodium glow, the crooked sign above it read, Gate 03. This is it, Kael murmured. He crouched, slotting the data shard into his battered wrist unit. The dim display flickered, strings of characters running across. Kael scrolled fast, jaw tight. See anything? Mira whispered. Yes. Internal schedule. He enlarged 1 block. Pre-dawn. Gate 03, handoff, Slake. Transfer yard C, and wait. Another line appeared, glowing in a different color. Outbound permit, 48H, orbital courier, supervisor, V, Vero. Clearance, ESB, Zemira's breath caught. 48 hours. That means they'll load her here before dawn, then ship her up on an orbital courier within 48 hours. Kael checked the watch on his wrist. Starting now. A ship horn wailed across the water, long and taut as a wire. In Mira's head, a clock began ticking. 47:59, 47:58. At the far end of the row came the rattle of steel wheels. Two silhouettes pushed a lift cart past. One man, cap low, scorpion tattoo flashing under the light, tucked a device into his pocket and spoke into his comm. Confirm W47, Gate 03 before dawn. Order from Kane. No noise. The name Ravik Kane sliced through Mira's ears. She clenched the broken whistle inside her sleeve. Kael laid a hand lightly over her wrist, steadying her breath. He pulled her deeper into the shadow between two stacks of cargo. You heard the chain? Slake collects, hands off to Vero at Yard C, then straight to the courier. ESBZ clearance means dirty pass-through security. What do we do first? Mira asked. Tonight we shadow Gate 03, catch Slake at the start. If that fails, intercept at Yard C. One way or another, we hold them before they reach the courier, preferably before they ever leave Earth. A sweep light sliced down from the warehouse roof. Kael pushed Mira lower, back against cold steel. The beam skimmed past, pausing, then sliding on, quiet again. Kael's voice was a low rumble. One more thing. This mark, T0.22, next to pre-dawn, means 22 minutes before gate open, they herd everyone into staging. That's when guard coverage is thinnest. Half the muscle goes forward to prep the route. Gate stays open 10 minutes, Mira recalled, her voice barely a breath. So we have 10 minutes to get inside the chain, or pull Lena out before they lock it. Exactly. Kael snapped the device shut, stowed it. And if we miss that window, we still have 48 hours. But every hour that passes puts Lena another orbit farther away. In the distance, a crane groaned awake, metal echoing down the dock like some enormous beast. 3 new figures appeared at the far end of the lane, moving in formation, lead, middle, tail. The middleman's wrist glinted black with a scorpion tattoo. Mira swallowed. Kael, I'm scared. Good, he said, locking eyes with her. Be scared. But don't stop. The lock on Gate 03 snapped open with a hard clack. Warning lights above the frame shifted from red to amber. The air grew heavier, thick with the stench of engine oil. Kael crouched lower, signaling her forward. We start with the herd cycle. I go first. You stay 3 steps back. If I say fall, fall. If I say run, run. No looking over your shoulder. Mira nodded, clipping the mic tighter to her collar. Her heartbeat fell into rhythm with his steps. Steadier now. In her head, the countdown kept going. 47:52, 47:51. They slipped from shadow, hugging the wall beside Gate 03. The steel door screeched open, spilling cold air from the warehouse. Inside, corridors marked in red paint stretched into the dark. U-47 glowed like the mouth of a tunnel. Kael leaned in, sweeping the edge of light, then slipped through. Mira followed close. The night over Arendor Prime seemed to hold its breath. And somewhere inside this maze, Lena was waiting for a hand to reach her before the ship left Earth behind. Darkness swallowed the port, turning the stacked containers into a steel maze. Sodium lights painted sickly yellow stripes across the wet concrete. Kael led Mira along the outer wall, keeping just enough distance to stay clear of the camera sweeps. Warehouse W47 up ahead, he said under his breath, eyes tracking the patrol lights. 3 guard posts, 1 slow camera on the east corner. 2 exits, main gate, and a maintenance route to the north. Mira nodded, forcing herself to memorize every word. Her pulse raced, but she drew a steady breath, careful not to let the sound escape her throat. Kael dropped to one knee, setting an old scanner on the ground. Its screen flickered, pulsing with dots that marked the guards' footsteps along their patrol path. 12-second gap between sweeps, he muttered. Enough to slip past the secondary fence if we're quick. Through the slit between two containers, Mira caught sight of a broad-shouldered man giving orders inside the yard. He was massive, neck thick, shoulders like a wall. Under the lamp, the Black Scorpion tattoo crawled from his throat down his bicep. "Who's that?" Mira whispered. "Garen," Kael said, his voice dropping lower. "Their enforcer. If he's here, the cargo's high value." They watched as Garen motioned for a subordinate to unlock a safe inside the warehouse. The door swung open a few inches, just long enough for a flash of cold white light to spill across the floor. Mira's stomach leapt. She couldn't see inside, but she knew whatever was locked away in there was why she was standing in this place tonight. Kael touched her shoulder lightly, pulling her back as a patrol squad passed by. The reek of oil and sweat rolled over them. "Easy," he whispered. "We're not going in tonight. This is recon only." Mira nodded, though her fingers still clenched the broken whistle in her pocket. "You're staring at Garen," she murmured.
You know him?
Kael's jaw flexed. "Ran into him on the outer rim once. He prefers to solve things with fists. But so do I." It was the first time Mira had heard his voice hold that cold edge. The edge of a soldier waking up. A sharp whistle sounded from the gate. The patrol shifted. Garen grabbed his radio, his tone sharp and clipped. "Keep your eyes open. No mistakes tonight. Cargo moves earlier than planned." Kael's glance cut to Mira, a glint in his eyes. "You heard that. They're moving her sooner." Mira's grip tightened. "Then we go now?" "No, we log the schedule first. Find the quiet spot to drop them fast. Go too soon, we die, and Lena goes up with them." He drew a quick diagram in the dust clinging to the container. Guard posts. Blind spots, escape route. Mira bent close, committing every line to memory. From a distance came the roar of a truck engine starting. Garen turned, signaling his men to shut the safe. The lock clanged shut with a sound like a final verdict. Kael rose, pulling Mira with him into deeper shadow before the next sweep passed. They stopped at the edge of the wall, hearts hammering in sync with the fading patrol boots. "Tomorrow night," Kael said, eyes never leaving the warehouse. "We come back. And next time, I go in." Mira pressed her lips together and nodded. Inside her, fear was hardening into resolve. If Kael was going in tomorrow night, she wouldn't stay outside. Together, they slipped back from the dockyard, leaving Warehouse 47 blazing behind them, like a predator guarding its secret. On the scanner screen, the dots kept moving, over and over, counting down the seconds until their next chance to strike. The sky over Arendor Prime was a dull gray that night, the wind from the docks carrying an even heavier stench of metal than usual. Kael and Mira returned to Warehouse 47, hugging the narrow maintenance path along the north side. 12-second window, Kael reminded her, eyes on the flickering handheld scanner. 3 steps behind me. When I drop, you drop. No sound, Mira nodded. Fingers clenched tight around the broken whistle in her pocket. They slipped through the secondary fence just as the sweep light rotated toward the main gate. The wind hissed between the rows of containers, like someone breathing fast in the dark. 2 guards peeled off from their post, ducking into a shadowed corner to smoke. Kael signaled Mira to freeze. Then he moved, silent as a shadow. 3 steps brought him right behind them. A lighter flared, casting half a face in orange glow, just long enough for Kael to strike. He caught the man's wrist, wrenching it hard. The lighter clattered to the ground. Kael's elbow snapped sideways. Catching the second guard across the jaw, he crumpled against the wall before he could shout. Kael locked the first guard's arm, pulled him down hard and choked him out in one smooth motion. The man went limp. Kael stripped a shock baton from his belt. Tested it. Purple arcs crackled to life. Mira drew a sharp breath, heart hammering. This wasn't the man slumped over a bottle anymore. This was a soldier. Kael gestured forward, moving toward the outer checkpoint. The two guards there barely had time to react before the electric crackle dropped, the first one twitching. The second started to raise his weapon. Kael swept his legs, snatched the blaster and leveled it at his face. "Sleep!" Kael growled. The butt of the blaster cracked down. The man collapsed. Kael swept the perimeter with a quick glance. Outer ring clear. He handed the blaster to Mira. "Keep this close. Don't fire until I say." Mira's hands trembled as she took it. "I've never fired a shot. Let's hope you still don't tonight. But if I go down, you pull the trigger. At anyone who isn't me." A sudden noise cut through the yard, the patrol lights sweeping back faster than expected. Kael grabbed Mira, pulling her tight against a stack of cargo. Both of them pressed into shadow. The beam slid past, lingered for a heartbeat, then moved on. Mira held her breath, hearing nothing but her own pulse. "Clear," Kael whispered. He checked the timing again. 7 minutes before the next patrol shift. "Move!" They crossed the yard, closing on the side entrance. Mira crouched low, heart racing but eyes wide open. She watched Kael work the door latch, fast and precise like a man who'd never left the trade. The door clicked open, revealing a thin slice of darkness. The cold smell of the frozen storage wafted out. Kael glanced back at her. "This is it. No distractions." Mira nodded. She saw the sweat beating at his temple, the glint in his eyes like cut glass. This was no longer the man hiding on his porch every night. This was him coming back and pulling her into that world with him. Kael gripped the shock baton tighter. Voice low. "From here on, there's no turning back." He slid inside. Mira followed close. Behind them, the lights of the yard dimmed, leaving only the echo of distant metal, like a drumbeat signaling the start of a real war. The air inside W-47 bit like a freezer. Pale blue tube lights flickered, striping the steel floor in broken bands. Kael moved first, Mira 3 steps behind, keeping to the dark as they slipped through the red-marked aisles. "Eyes up," Kael whispered. "They mount motion sensors on the crossbeams." Mira glanced up. Tiny red dots winked on the overhead. Rails, sensor lights. They froze at the sound of a forklift whining in the next row. Kael raised a hand. Wait. The engine noise faded. They crossed through a side doorway. This section was darker, lit only by the dim glow of emergency exit. Signs. Mira spotted fresh tracks glistening with oil, leading deeper into the warehouse. Kael crouched at an auxiliary power box, checking the lock. "They just switched the backup line," he murmured. "That means there are people inside. More than a few." A faint metallic click. Kael went rigid. Mira looked down. His boot had nudged a thin tripwire stretched across the floor. "A trap," she started. But the shot cracked first. A spark seared past the crate edge, slamming into the steel post behind Kael. He spun, dragging Mira to the floor, his body covering hers. A second shot screamed by, tearing across his arm, blood sprayed in a hot arc. "Kael!" Mira yanked him back from the line of fire. A silhouette appeared on the catwalk above. Suppressed pistol braced on the railing. The beam from his light cut across the aisle. Hunting. Kael's jaw tightened, signaling her to keep silent. Mira knelt low, pulled the roll of bandage from her pocket, wrapping it hard around his arm. "Tighter," Kael growled through his teeth. Mira pulled until the blood stopped seeping. "Good. Good enough," static crackled from a radio above, then a deep familiar voice. "Garen, move the cargo." "Slake, 10 minutes to gate 03. Leave no casings." Mira's eyes locked on Kael. "Lena, not confirmed," he whispered back. "But if Garen's giving orders, they're moving her." The gunman's light swept another pass. Kael gestured. Mira nodded. She grabbed an empty can from the floor and hurled it into a dark corner 10 meters away. It clattered across the racks. Clang, clang, clang. The beam swung instantly toward the noise. That was all Kael needed. He surged forward, baton sparking violet, cracking across the shooter's wrist. The gun flew free, clattering to the floor below. Kael hauled himself halfway up the railing, slammed the man's head into the steel edge, out cold. Mira snatched the pistol off the floor, shoved it toward him. Kael shook his head. Keep it. Hold it steady. Don't fire until I say. They moved quickly through the racks. Reaching a small locked storage bay, Kael pulled the mag stripe key he'd taken earlier, swiped it fast. The lock disengaged with a hiss. Inside sat a plastic crate stamped Yard C, handoff with a thin packet of documents taped on top. Kael tore the manifest free. SLKE, So3 Gate, Yard C, SOP, V, Slake, Yard C, Supervisor V, Mira read under her breath. That's Vero? Yeah. Kael folded the sheet, stuffed it in his jacket. The route's blown open now. 3 metallic bangs rang down the hall, an internal signal. The corridor lights flared to full brightness. Shapes appeared at the far end. Moving in tight formation, front, middle. Rear Kael shoved Mira against the cold wall. His eyes flicked toward the north maintenance route, the escape path they'd marked last night. They're moving early. Mira, right now. Forklifts rolled out from the warehouse floor, engines growling, turning toward the main route. In the center, Slake strode fast, scorpion tattoo glinting on his wrist. Radio in hand, Yard C. Vero's waiting, he said into the mic. Mira started forward. Kael grabbed her wrist, holding her still. Not yet. Step out now, you die. Follow me. They slipped back to the maintenance corridor, narrow enough for one person at a time. The vibration of machinery shook the thin steel walls. The smell of oil grew stronger, like the whole warehouse had started to move. Kael spun, locking eyes with Mira. Listen, once we hit the yard, stay on the yellow stripe. That's Slake's route. We trail 15 meters back. No closer. Mira nodded. Focus overtaking fear. She clenched the broken whistle until it burned in her palm, like a promise. They crawled through the maintenance way. Light from the yard sliced in sharp as a blade. Ahead, the first forklift turned left. The handoff crate clamped tight. Overhead, Garen's voice bellowed, "Move it!" Kael pulled his hood low to hide the bloodstain. Exhaling once, sharp and steady, starting. Slake's tail, he murmured. If we want Lena, we bite down on this chain and don't let go. Starting Slake's tail. Kael's voice was barely a growl. Before he melted back into the dark, Mira stayed 3 steps. Behind, the yellow stripe on the ground, led them around the container rows like a glowing thread. Ahead, Slake walked fast between 2 escorts. The scorpion tattoo flashed on his wrist. His radio sat clipped to his left shoulder. Yard C in 5, he barked. Vero's ready. A narrow turn. Kael raised 2 fingers. Slow down. Mira instantly matched pace, slowing her breath, walking on her toes. She clicked the tiny flashlight in her sleeve twice, their signal, letting Kael know the rear path was clear. At the service junction, one escort peeled off to check a side passage. Kael shifted rhythm, slid along the wall, then ghosted in behind him. His hand clamped the man's mouth. The other arm locked tight around his neck. 10 seconds. The man went limp. Kael eased him down, stripped the radio, rifled the pockets, a key card, a folded manifest. Mira leaned close. Kael switched to red light, scanning fast. 3 gate. Yard C, handoff. Slake, Sup, V, Vero. Vac TR12, refrigerated. Window, Zivero 10. Come out. Outer cameras are down, Mira whispered. Deliberate maintenance, Kael muttered. 10-minute window. TR12, cold rig, insulated, no thermal trace. Slake's footsteps were already farther ahead. Kael signaled to move. The lane to Yard C stretched like a tunnel under the open sky. Container stacks towering on both sides. Far off, floodlights swept the auxiliary pad in wide, pale arcs. Slake stopped at a half-manual checkpoint. He swiped his card. The side gate turned green. A TR-12 backed out, taillights flashing red. Across its side, black stenciled letters read, Courier Prep. There. Mira swallowed hard. Lena, she could be inside. Could be. Kael kept his tone flat. But don't break cover. From the waiting station on the far side, a woman stepped out. Hair tied back, coat dark, posture razor straight. She took the clipboard from Slake, signed quick and clean. Kael narrowed his eyes. Vero. The wind off the bay carried a thin, chemical chill of liquid nitrogen across the pad. A short horn blast, signal to prep for movement. Two guards turned to glance at the control board. Distracted for one beat, opening, Kael said. 3, 2, 1. Mira clicked her light 3 times, signaled to cut or pull back, but this time, she angled her wrist so the flash bounced off the exit sign on the column, drawing the guard's eyes away. In that split second, Kael slipped behind Slake, driving him into the side of the cold rig. Next window. Where? Kael's voice was flat steel, the baton's crackling tip pressed to Slake's ribs. Slake spat a bloody grin. Ask Kane. The baton snapped, short and sharp. Slake convulsed. Say it again, Kael hissed, unshaken. Where? Slake gasped, shuddered. Pad B2, 40 minutes. Vero on site. Then, straight to the courier. Kael shot Mira a glance. Log it. Mira repeated it in her head. Pad B2, 40 minutes. Vero present. Courier next. She pulled out her phone, still in airplane mode, and typed it into an offline note before slipping it back. From the side gate came a sudden clatter. One guard turning back earlier than expected. His flashlight beam swept across. Kael shoved. Slake back against the rig, pretending to check the cargo seal. Done yet? The guard barked. Slake cursed, straightening. Done! Get out of the way! Vero's gaze slid across them once. Sharp, cold. Then moved on, as though she had seen nothing, or seen enough. Kael pulled Mira away from the light, back through the maintenance lane. She smelled it, Mira breathed. Maybe, Kael said, but she trusts the schedule more than her instincts. We have 40 minutes, the TR-12's engine roared. Gearbox clunking into gear, its taillights sliced the night. Kael stopped under the yard schematic, tracing the grid with a gloved finger. B2's at the far edge. Right by the ramp to the courier pad, he said. They'll stage the cargo there. Guard rings thin. Half the force splits between both ends. Mira saw the fresh yellow line branching off the main lane. She understood. A door had opened, not wide. Not long, but real. The radio hissed, Vero's voice clear. Truck 1, move. Silence on comms. Follow B2 route. Slake's voice tight. Copy. Kael pulled his hood low, hiding the dried blood. 15 meters, he murmured. Keep your eyes on the rear wheels. If they stop, that's our moment. The wind from the water stung with salt. Mira drew a deep breath. Fear shrinking down to a hard point in her chest. All that remained was a wire pulled taut, pure focus. Silently, they moved out, trailing the red taillights of TR-12 toward Pad B2, where the first decisive move would come, before dawn touched the sky over Arendor Prime. Pad B2, Sector 9, Auxiliary. Pad cold white floodlights swept across the landing zone, wind off the water carrying the sting of nitrogen and machine oil. Slake's TR-12 rolled into the marked bay, taillights pulsing like a frantic heartbeat. Kael pulled Mira behind a row of chemical drums, keeping the promised 15-meter gap. Eyes on the rear wheels, he murmured. If it stops, we move. If it doesn't, we tail. Mira nodded, both hands in her coat pockets clutching the broken whistle until her knuckles ached. A secondary crane lowered its hook. The guards shifted, crisscrossing, forming a textbook escort perimeter. Vero emerged from the control station, tablet in hand. The wind lifted her tied hair, exposing an earpiece. Verify TR-12, she said into comms, voice clipped. No errors. Kane hates corrections. Slake rapped twice on the truck's side panel, an internal signal. A side hatch slid open, revealing a smaller alloy pod with a narrow vent slit like a barred window. Mira's breath caught. A single blue hair tie was snagged in the mesh. Lena's hair tie. The one she'd given her that morning? Kael. The name was barely wind. His hand closed around her wrist, firm, steady. "I see it." "Not yet." 2 guards threaded a seal bar through the lock, snapped it shut. One sleeve hitched up, Black Scorpion tattoo glaring. Mira's chest tightened. The signal mast over pad B2 turned amber. Preload. Kael's eyes swept the yard, counting rotations. 1, 2, 3. No window big enough to get in and back out alive. The radio hissed. "Report from main yard. Unknown movement near W47. Vero's reply was ice. "Change route. Move the cargo to Beta Line, accelerate schedule. Slake." No chatter. "Copy," Slake snapped. Another TR-12 fired up from the next lane, identical to the first, its number plate half obscured by oily grime. "Mirror trap," Kael muttered. "One of these is a decoy." The escort team split. Half switching to the second truck, Vero circled, eyes flicking into the dark corners. Pausing for a half-second where Kael and Mira hid, then moving on. "She's onto us," Mira whispered. "Let her smell us," Kael said calmly. "Just make sure she bites the wrong trail." "We stay on Slake." The signal light flipped green. "Move!" Slake's truck lurched forward. The crane lifted the pod from the hatch and slid it onto the rig's mounting bed. Mira bit her lip hard enough to taste blood. "Lena's in there." "Very likely," Kael said flatly, eyes never leaving the pod. One guard turned away, distracted by the console. 3 seconds of clear space. Mira's body tensed. Heels lifting. Kael yanked her back just as the flashlight beam swept past again. "Not dying for 3 seconds," he hissed, eyes locked on the loading frame. We wait for the gold window. When they mass their guard like at gate 03, a short hiss from the air horn. The lift shook, locking the pod into place on the rig's frame. Slake signed off on Vero's tablet. Vero tipped her head back, staring into the night sky as she keyed her comm. "Courier takes delivery inside 24 hours. Beta Line runs the outer route. Limit exposure. Any tails? Cut them. What about ESB?" someone asked. "Handled," Vero replied flatly. "Do your part." The word courier sent a chill down Mira's spine. In her head, the invisible clock began counting down again. She pressed her back against the cold steel, breathing short and even. A pair of scout drones buzzed overhead. Red lights blinking, Kael tugged his hood lower, shadowing the bloodstain on his arm. The drones screamed past. No alarm. "Blind spot under the wing," he murmured. "They're saving power." Slake climbed into the cab. The TR-12 rumbled alive. Vero lifted a hand, dropped it. The truck rolled forward. "Stay on the rear wheels," Kael said quietly. 15 meters. If they turn onto Beta, we find out where that pod goes, before they ever get it to the courier." Mira nodded, eyes fixed on the blue hair tie in the vent. Tiny, but blazing like a signal flare in the dark. The wind off the seawall whipped across the pad. TR-12's taillights washed over them before vanishing into the night. Behind them, Pad B2 powered down, sinking back into metallic fog. Mira whispered, as if vowing to herself, "They are not taking her off this planet." Kael's reply was barely audible. "Then don't blink." They slipped out of cover, melting into the darkness, trailing the red lights. A lifeline stretched across fate itself. Ahead, Yard C merged into the concrete corridor that led to Beta Line. And inside that cold alloy pod, Lena was being carried farther, each meter bringing her closer to the stars hanging above them. Sector 9, Beta Route. Auxiliary pad the TR-12's taillights were nothing but 2 fading red dots now. The wind off the harbor cut straight through Mira's coat, sharp and damp. Kael pulled her deeper into the shadows, waiting until the convoy disappeared from sight. "What now?" Mira's voice came out rough from the tension. Kael kept his eyes on the empty lane where the truck had gone. "Too risky to stay on them. Next checkpoint, they'll run thermal sweeps with drones, so we just let them go?" Mira's jaw clenched. Kael shook his head. "No, we go in another way." He pulled out an old digital schematic, flipped it to offline mode. His finger traced a thin line across the map. Here, secondary drainage pipe. Runs straight to Yard C. Tight, but one person can fit. I'll take it. You? Alone? Yes. If you come with me, we'll both jam up when it's time to get out. But if you don't come back, Kael met her gaze, steady. Then you're the only one left to get Lena out. Understand? Mira's grip closed around the broken whistle. I'm not sitting still. You won't. Kael pulled a thin data card from his jacket and pressed it into her palm. Trigger an anonymous alert to ESB. Set it to delay 10 minutes after I breach. I want them to arrive once I've broken their inner line. You want them storming the place? Yes, otherwise I can only pull Lena out alone. I want the whole nest burned down. The yard light cast Kael's face in stark yellow shadow. Gone was the man she had seen drinking himself into silence. This was Kael the soldier, calm, precise, frighteningly clear. You're not afraid of showing your face again? Mira asked softly. I am. Kael flicked the shock baton open. Its violet arc hissed once, then died. But I'm more afraid of you never seeing your sister again. A low orbital fairy horn wailed somewhere over the water, a sound like a giant clock ticking down. Kael folded the map and tucked it away. We have less than 2 hours before they seal the courier hold. He pulled his hood up, shadowing half his face. Mira, he said, voice low. When I give the word, meet Lena at the drain exit. Keep your weapon ready. If anything feels wrong, you run. Don't look back. Mira nodded, eyes burning but voice steady. Then don't die. I refuse to be the only one who comes back. Kael's mouth curved in the faintest hint of a smile. Not in the plan. He knelt at the grate, spun the latch once. The hatch opened with a metallic groan, and a cold, damp gust rolled out. Kael looked back one last time, nodding to her. Keep the comm open. When I say start, send the signal. Then he slid into the pipe, vanishing into the dark. The cover slammed shut, leaving Mira alone under the harbor wind. She drew a deep breath, thumb resting on the transmitter, far off. The TR-12's lights blinked like a pair of red eyes, staring back at her from the rise of Yard C. Mira clenched the whistle so hard it hurt. You'd better come back, she whispered. For me, for Lena. Inside the pipe, Kael crawled forward, each shift of his weight ringing against the metal, like a drum calling him into war. He had already made the choice. Tonight he would pull the girl out alive, or there would be no second chance. And for the first time in years, Kael's heart pounded with the rhythm of a man who was truly, brutally alive. The hollow clang of steel echoed inside the drain. Kael crawled through ankle-deep water, counting every bolt in the pipe the way a soldier counts heartbeats. A crosshatch appeared ahead. He twisted open his folding knife, jammed the latch, forced the grate just wide enough for a hand. Beyond it lay the service lip of Yard C. Cold nitrogen steamed across the floor. 2 guards stood with their backs turned, breath fogging gold under the lamps. Kael slid out, pressed flat to the grating. 1 beat, 2. He rose like a spring, left hand on the throat, right arm locking the elbow. The first man's breath caught. His eyes bulged, then he collapsed soundlessly. The second turned, hand already going for the alarm. Kael's knee drove into his ribs before he could shout. The man folded. Kael twisted his wrist down, dropped him hard. No scream, just a hiss. Air leaving a bag. Kael stripped the shock baton from his belt. Snap. A violet arc hummed. Swallowing all sound, he dragged both bodies into the shadow of the nitrogen tanks, threw a tarp over them. His wrist comm buzzed. I'm ready. Mira's whisper. Count 10, Kael breathed. Then ping ESB. He ghosted across the light strip, heading toward the inner lot, where Slake's TR-12 waited. The inner ring had 3 guards, 1 at the column, 2 walking a counterclock patrol. Kael palmed a nut the size of his thumb and flicked it at the steel rail in the far corner. Ting! Both patrolmen glanced right. Opening, Kael surged forward. Like an arrow loosed, the baton cracked. Across the column guard's shoulder, lights out. He stripped the man's blaster mid-motion, swung it into his strong hand. A quick blue stun bolt dropped the first patrolman to his knees, and Kael's follow-up strike smashed him flat. The last guard got his weapon halfway around. Kael caught the shot on the baton, the blast sparking against a tool rack. He hurled the baton end over end, an arc of purple lightning. The guard convulsed, weapon dropping. Kael closed the gap in 2 strides, slammed him chest first into the wall, snapped his wrist. Crack. Silence. Inner ring down. Send it, Kael murmured. Mira's voice came back, tight but steady. It's out. ESB gets it in 10. Wind roared through the comm, covering her sharp breaths. Another light swept across the bay. Drone sweep. Kael dropped behind a tool crate. Holding his breath, the drone drifted past. Red sensor pulsing, half a beat. Then it banked away, just as predicted. Blind spot under the wing. Kael eased forward, deeper into the service hall. Ahead loomed a steel door marked Hold Bay Access. The maglock bore fresh scratch marks. He tucked the blaster under his arm, swiped the stolen keycard from the night before. Red light. He shifted angle, swiped diagonally. Red again. From the left, Mira whispered in his ear, remembering how Slake swiped his card. Kael smiled faintly. You've been paying attention. Swipe. Green. The door cracked open. A blast of freezer-cold air rolled out, smelling like a storm. 2 silhouettes inside. One sat slouched at a console, earbuds in, hand resting on the alarm bell, half asleep. Kael glided behind him. Pressed the blaster to the back of his neck. Don't. The guard flinched. Started to turn. Turn and you're out cold. He froze. Kael thumbed the stun setting. Short pulse. The man slumped without a sound. The second stood near the cage. Checking the seals on an alloy pod, Kael closed in. Chopped the back of his neck once. Then again. Down. Silence filled the bay. Kael pressed his ear to the vent of the pod. Inside. Only the steady hiss of the coolant compressor. His palm rested on the lock catch. Slick with sweat. At the hatch, he whispered into the comm. Stay at the drain. I'm starting from somewhere across the city. The orbital ferry's horn moaned, stretching the moment taut. Kael wedged the blaster under the latch, levering hard. The steel groaned. The lock snapped. He slid his body to cover the opening, one hand reaching inside, searching for the heat of life. Lena, he said, voice barely above a breath. Don't be afraid. I'm getting you out. Out in the night, Arendor Prime's wind howled down the yard lanes. In Mira's ear, Kael's voice came through the channel. One word, low and final, like the pull of a trigger unlocking every chance they had left. Start. The hatch swung open with a screech. Cold air poured out like from a giant freezer. Inside, Lena was curled up in a corner, clothes filthy, hair tangled, eyes wide with fear. Kael dropped to one knee, pulling off his helmet. Lena, he said slowly, voice low and steady. Your sister sent me. You're safe now. Lena shook her head hard, backing into the wall. Kael reached into his jacket pocket, slowly pulling out the blue hair tie Mira had given him. Its faint glow caught the darkness. Lena's wet eyes widened. Mira? She's waiting for you outside. Kael held out his hand. Come with me. The girl trembled, but finally placed her small hand in his. Kael pulled her close, wrapping her in his coat. Stay quiet, he warned, eyes scanning the room. Outside, the alarm wailed, long tearing through the air. Ravik had discovered the cargo was gone. Kael pressed his back to the wall, one hand on his blaster, the other shielding Lena's head. They moved through the service corridor, dodging each camera's sweep. Red emergency lights flared, throwing long stripes across the floor. The loudspeaker roared, Lock down all beta gates! Team 1, return to post. Check compartment TR-12 immediately. A guard burst from the junction. Kael didn't hesitate. He drove his shoulder in, slammed the man down, and struck with the butt of his blaster. The man went limp. Lena pressed into Kael's chest, breathing fast. Ahead, the service exit glowed faintly. "Mira, I'm here," Kael said into his mic. Mira's voice came back, tight but steady. "Doors open." "I'm waiting." Kael spun the valve. The hatch popped open and the damp smell of the pipes flooded in. Mira rushed forward, pulling Lena into her arms. Lena burst into tears, clutching her sister tight. Kael turned, scanning the corridor one last time. "Get out now. Drones will sweep in under a minute." Mira grabbed Lena's hand and ran first. Kael followed, firing twice at the security sensors to jam their feed. The alarm shifted to rapid pulses, lights flashing like a storm. They crawled through, back into the drainage tunnels. Mira guided Lena through the grate first. Kael came last, slamming the cover shut. Bootsteps thundered above just as they vanished into the pipe. In the damp dark, Mira whispered, "You're bleeding." Blood from Kael's arm had soaked into his sleeve. "Just a scratch," he said, still watching the faint glow at the tunnel's end. "Once we're outside, I'll handle it." They emerged at the quay just as an armored convoy roared in, ESB reinforcements. Red and blue lights strobed across the yard. Kael nodded. "Right on time." He helped Lena to her feet and handed her to Mira. "Keep her here. I'll hold the entry point until ESB sweeps through." "Kael!" Mira called, but he was already running back into the dark, blaster in hand. Mira hugged Lena close, tears streaming down her face. The first gunshot cracked from the docks, proof the fight was far from over. In the distance, Yard C blazed awake like a battlefield, and Kael, shadow of the night, was still in there, fighting until there was nowhere left to fall back. Scattered gunfire echoed from the yard. ESB lights strobed red and blue, throwing frantic shadows across the concrete. Kael hugged the wall, slipping past scorched containers, heading for the center of Yard C, where he knew Ravik Kane wouldn't run. The main corridor flashed with emergency strobes. Ozone and smoke thickened the air. Kael's steps fell heavy like war drums, but his heart beat steady. No more liquor, no more shaking hands. A figure blocked the path. Ravik Kane, dust-stained coat, pistol gripped tight. Red light painted a cold smile across his face. "Former Terran Defense Force." Ravik's lips curled. "I heard you died with your wife and kid. Turns out you only half died." Kael tightened his grip on the blaster but didn't fire. "Drop the gun, Ravik. Game's over." "No." Ravik stepped closer. "The game's just starting." "What do you know about loss, Kael?" "I lost my entire crew because the Terran Council cut our budget. You lost your family to a stupid accident. I turned my pain into an empire. What did you do? Drink yourself rotten in Sector 9. His words cut like knives through old memories. Kael saw again his child's small hands vanish under the rubble. But this time, Mira and Lena's faces followed, burning the darkness away. He drew a long breath. "I've been drunk long enough. Tonight I'm sober, and you're not taking Lena anywhere," Ravik snarled. "Stop me, go on," he fired. Kael rolled aside, the blast sparking against a steel drum behind him. He answered with 2 return shots, forcing Ravik back toward the stairs to the catwalk. The fight became a deadly dance. Fire. Dodge, shift positions. Ravik bounded up the steps, shooting another volley. Kael ducked behind a rack, counting beats. Metal steps rang with Ravik's boots. Kael tossed an empty casing to the right, clatter echoing. Ravik turned and fired toward the sound. Kael surged up the stairs, slammed the blaster butt into Ravik's wrist. The gun skidded away. They grappled on the catwalk. Ravik was strong, but Kael had lived through hundreds of hours of close-quarters drills. A leg sweep sent Ravik down, but he rolled, grabbing a steel pipe. The swing cracked across Kael's shoulder, white pain shooting down his arm. He staggered, then charged back, locked the strike, and slammed Ravik flat onto the metal grate. Ravik's breath came ragged, blood on his lip, yet he still smiled. "You won't kill me, will you?" Kael pressed the blaster to his temple, finger tight on the trigger. 1 beat, 2. Then he lowered the gun. "No," Kael said softly. "You'll live! To sit in a cell and watch your empire collapse." He yanked a pair of cuffs from a fallen guard's belt, twisted Ravik's arms back, locked them. ESB sirens shrieked closer. A squad poured into the corridor, flashlights blazing. "Drop the weapon!" the commander barked. Kael raised his hands, kicked the blaster aside. "Primary target's here," he said flatly. Still breathing, two officers dragged Ravik to his feet. He kept smiling, but it was no longer triumph, just the twisted grin of a man who knew he'd lost. Kael watched them haul him away, chest rising with heavy breaths. A small explosion went off at the far end of the yard, the secondary weapons cache igniting, flames reaching skyward like a signal flare. Kael retrieved his blaster, holstered it, then turned and walked out. Melting into the dark, behind him, ESB lights swept across Yard C, painting everything in red and blue. But Kael was already gone, leaving Ravik to justice and letting the past drift away like smoke into the night sky. The ESB loudspeakers shrieked, "Infiltration team, move!" Red and blue lights swept across the yard. Figures in combat armor surged forward like a tide of steel. Garen was slammed face down, wrists twisted, cheek ground against the concrete. He growled, tried to lift his head, but the rifle butt pressed to his neck. Quiet. Farther away, Slake was dragged from the TR-12 cabin. Boots scraping a long black streak, an officer barked, "Seal this pod! Mark it as a handoff decoy!" The freezer hatch swung open. Empty. A lure. ESB locked it and moved to the one marked with the blue thread sigil, the silent guide. Vero appeared at the edge of the yard trying to slip through the crowd. She raised a hand, then dropped it, turning away. Two operators blocked her path, badges raised. "Stop!" Vero lifted her chin, eyes cold. "Do you know who I am?" "We do." "That's why we're cuffing you." The cuffs snapped shut around her wrists with a quiet final click. An armored carrier rolled in. The back doors opened. Ravik Kane was shoved out, already in restraints, face flashing under the lights. His eyes darted, searching for an exit. There was none. Only the black visors of the strike team and the hovering drones, unblinking eyes. At the key, Mira held Lena close. The girl still trembled, but her breathing had steadied. "I'm here," Mira whispered, forehead resting against Lena's tangled hair. "It's over. You're safe now." Joran called in on the family channel, his voice breaking when Lena answered, "I'm safe." A dark-coated figure stopped behind them. Mira spun. Kael. The landing lights caught the dried blood streaked along his arm. "You," Mira began, but Kael shook his head. "Get her out of here," he said quietly. "Keep her warm. Stay away from the lights." Mira swallowed all the words that wanted to come out. Only one made it through, thin as breath. "Thank you." Kael gave the slightest nod, accepting, and slipped back into the key shadows where the light couldn't touch him. An ESB officer jogged up. "You were the anonymous caller?" Mira hesitated half a beat. "Yes, we'll need your statement." "And where is the man who helped you?" Mira looked out at the black water glittering with yard lights. "He's not one of yours," she said softly. "And he doesn't like the light." The officer paused, then nodded. "Fair enough. Saving lives comes first." He turned and shouted, "Load Ravik Kane! Take Garen Slake Vero to interrogation. Lock down all of Yard C. Issue warrants for the rest of their network." The yard roared like a great machine powering down. Floodlights dimmed. Night wind carried the smell of hot metal out toward the station's sea. The drone made one final pass, blinked red, then shot skyward. Waves lapped gently against the key, like the city itself had taken a long, slow breath. Mira guided Lena along the wall, away from the lights. She glanced back. Kael's shadow was gone. Only the ghost of a wooden chair remained in memory, where a man once sat, staring at the sky, punishing himself in silence. By dawn, news feeds ran the headline, "ESB cracks Black Scorpion ring in Sector 9. Kingpin Ravik Kane captured." The anchor spoke of an unnamed hero. Mira switched the screen off. She placed the blue ribbon into Lena's hand, returning a piece of the heart wrestled back from the dark. Not far from the key, Kael leaned against a rusted wall. His breathing was deep, slow. Pain throbbed in his arm, then dulled. He looked at his hands, still trembling, but no longer from drink. In his pocket, the comm unit buzzed. A short message from Mira. Home safe. Thank you. Kael read it, didn't reply. He closed his eyes for one breath, letting the sound of the waves wash out the last gunshots ringing in his ears. The first sun crept over the harbor's rim. Arendor Prime lit up as if scrubbed clean of the night's dust. A new day began, bringing offers, questions, cameras eager to put a name to a face. In Sector 9, a wooden gate would echo with a gentle knock. Thanks would be spoken in a small courtyard, and before the sun reached its peak, someone would come, asking to honor the hero. Kyle's answer was already in his eyes. Dawn spilled gold across the old rooftops, washing away the smell of gunpowder from the night before. The wooden gate of Mira's house creaked open. Kael stepped into the yard. Lena sat on the porch steps, an old scarf around her shoulders. She leapt to her feet when she saw him and ran straight into his arms. Kael froze for half a second, then dropped to one knee, catching the tiny, crushing hug that almost took his breath away. Mira stood at the doorway, eyes tired but shining. Come inside, she said softly. Mothers made warm water. Sunlight streamed through the window, falling across the wooden table. Kael sat down. Mira cleaned the wound on his arm with the warm cloth. Each touch of the gauze made Kael flinch, but he said nothing. You'll need stitches, Mira said. Otherwise it'll get infected. Kael nodded once. Do it. The room was silent except for the soft sound of thread sliding through skin and Mira's steady breathing. Joren sat outside, legs swinging, glancing in now and then, as if he couldn't believe the man inside was the same one who once lay on a wooden chair with a bottle. When she finished, Mira wrapped the bandage neatly. Kael flexed his hand, still sore, but he smiled for the first time since returning to Sector 9. Good, he said. The smile made Mira feel as though a weight had lifted from her chest. She didn't reply, just poured him a cup of hot tea. Kael drained it, the rising steam hiding the depth in his eyes. Birdsong chirped outside. A new day had begun, and for the first time, Kael thought it might be worth living. The next noon, an ESB armored vehicle stopped at the gate. An officer stepped out and handed Mira a letter. Kael skimmed it. Invitation to attend the Hero's Commendation Ceremony, Sector 9, Kael Draven. He folded the letter and set it on the table. No, he said firmly. Mira blinked. Why? They just want to thank you. Thanks are fine, Kael replied, but not under cameras. I won't have them turning this into a spectacle that drags your family into it. Mira stood silent for a beat, then nodded. Then I'll tell them not to come back. That evening, a few reporters showed up, cameras peeking over the gate. Mira stepped out, slammed the gate shut, and stood firm. He's not taking visitors, she said flatly. Leave. They grumbled but left. Kael watched from the window, saying nothing. Then he turned back to the dinner table where Lena and Joren were laughing. He pulled out a chair and sat down. For the first time choosing to share a family meal, just to hear that laughter. Night fell. Moonlight spilled across the porch, silvering two silhouettes sitting side by side. Kael held a cold cup of tea. I once had a family, he said slowly. Mira said nothing, just leaned closer to listen. Kael spoke of the accident that had taken his wife and child. His voice was low, sometimes breaking, but for the first time he didn't look away. I should have been there, he said. I should have saved them. But I was late. I came back to smoke. Mira placed her hand over his. You saved Lena, she said gently. You were exactly where you needed to be. Kael looked down at his hands, at the dry blood still caught around his nails. He stood, went to the corner and grabbed the old bottle of liquor. Mira held her breath as he uncorked it, the harsh smell filling the room. Kael stared at it for a long moment, then tilted it, pouring every drop onto the ground. The smell faded into the night. He tossed the bottle into the trash. Enough, he said. Mira smiled, small but bright as a light. She saw Kael's eyes for the first time, looking forward rather than trapped in the dark. In the days that followed, Kael rose early. He trained outside, sweat shining in the morning sun. The bottle was gone from the chair. Only a folded blanket remained. Kael took a job training Sector 9's youth in self-defense. Jorn was the first to sign up, grinning proudly when he learned his first kick. In the afternoons, Mira stopped by with a basket of food. They sat in the yard while Lena read aloud to them both. The house felt warmer now, like the darkness had never been there. One day, Mira watched Kael pack up his gear. "Do you ever think about leaving Sector 9? She asked. Kael shook his head. "No, I have a reason to stay." Mira didn't ask what that reason was. But when she left, Kael's quiet smile lingered long after. Dawn. Kael walked the path to the cemetery on the outskirts. Mist drifted between rows of stone markers. He stopped at the grave that bore the names of his wife and child. He placed his old Terran Defense Force badge on the stone, the one he used to wear over his heart. "I'm home," Kael whispered, "but now I have to keep going." He stood there for a long time, until the early sun stretched his shadow long across the grass. When he turned away, that shadow drew shorter, as though the past was staying behind. Mira waited at the cemetery gate. She said nothing, only smiled. Kael walked to her. The first light of morning fell across them both, warming what cold still lingered in his chest. For the first time in years, Kael saw the dawn not as a sentence, but as a promise, and he walked beside Mira, toward a future opening as gently as the first breath of the day. And that is how Kael Draven, Sector 9's lost soldier, found himself again. A man who once drowned the past in liquor, now steps into the light and chooses a new beginning. If you want more stories like this, about hope, redemption, and those who refuse to give up, hit like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next episode. Every dawn is a promise, and we'll meet again in the next story.